There we go. How was your break, ladies? And gentlemen, Michael, not ignoring you. I already asked you about yours in the other one.
It was relaxing and long, and I'm ready for routine again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm ready for Gary to go back to work too.
They went back today, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. It was time.
That is funny.
Did you have a good break, Stacy?
Yeah, it was fine. Brett worked
Oh yeah.
nonstop. Yeah. So, yes. And Jillian had school.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, she didn't get a break. Kerrigan was snowed in with us for 5 days, so that was really fun.
Oh, that is fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you guys play games?
We did. Yeah, we played Monopoly. Jillian, bankrupted me. Like, so true to real life. Let's just go there, okay? She did not think that was funny when I said that.
That is hilarious. Did she get all of her stuff? Her oh gosh, the stuff for her new place for Christmas?
Yeah. Yep. And then her birthday is Monday. So
awesome.
yeah, she's ready to roll. She's ready to start her own business and rule the world at 19. We'll see how this goes.
I love that though.
Yeah.
Girl
She'll
boss
graduate
right there.
about 5 weeks. So
Wow, that's coming. I can't believe that. Our girl is growing up, Stacy.
I know. It will be good. I only have one more tuition payment. That's what that means.
Heck yeah, celebration after
How many
that.
years?
That is so funny. All right, well, it's 10:30. If you haven't yet, please put your name and your birthday in the chat. And I'm gonna go, oh, there's someone else to admit. I shared with the last Zoom in the summertime that they had people admitting for us. So if I pause like randomly, it's because I'm admitting people who join a little bit later. So I'm just warning you about that. So anyway, I will go ahead and share our screen. Click that one. I want to share this one, I think. All right. So do you see my responding to mental health and emotional? Okay, awesome. All right. So my name is Danielle Balk, and this is
And I'm Amber Graves.
and we are going to present on providing a safe space, responding to mental health and emotional distress in the classroom. So I wanted to start by introducing myself. Like I just said, my name is Danielle. I earned my undergrad in social work from the University of Iowa and my master's in school counseling from Drake University. I did all my classes for mental health degree, but decided not to do my internship. I liked the school setting, and you get a lot of mental health in the school setting, as most of you know. And I just didn't think I could take on the mental health field. It was just a lot in the schools, and that was enough for me. As far as work experience, I worked at a daycare for 10 years. Yeah, I love the littles. I worked with middle school and high school students in a mental health classroom for a couple years and a suspension and expulsion classroom. That was a lot of fun. And I worked as a middle school special education associate while I was getting my master's degree. And then I was a high school counselor for 6 years at Southeast Valley. And so then I am now a college and career transition counselor here at Iowa Central, and I work with Fort Dodge Senior High and St. Ed's. And yeah, that is my background for my work history. And I just want to say that I am not an expert in mental health, but I have knowledge from my experiences, and that I was asked to share that I hope you find helpful today.
So I'm Amber Graves. I'm joining Danielle with this presentation today. I'm the school nurse here at Iowa Central. This is my 15th year here as the school nurse. And I went to college, actually at Dordt College for 2 years, and then I transferred to Augustana in Sioux Falls and got my bachelor's degree from there in nursing. And I started out my career working in mental health, outpatient in the community, going to homes and helping people with setting up their groceries and various things. And then moved into public health, and then I worked for 5 years inpatient at Mary Greeley Medical Center in the mental health unit. So I did the ER triages to see if a person should be admitted to the hospital for psychiatric needs, and then worked on the floor as well. And then now I've been here for a long time. This is my 15th year. So I'm happy to be joining in the presentation.
Okay, so we just wanted to take a group poll about who is here today, but I can look in the chat. Again, just a reminder, please put your name and your birthday in the chat so you get credit for being here today. And thank you guys for all attending. And again, before we start, we are not experts on mental health and do not expect you to be at the end of this. We were asked to do this because of our experience and what we still come across in our positions today. Mental health is a topic that isn't talked about as much as it should be. So we are hoping by having this Zoom session, we can have an open dialogue with information, ideas, and resources to help in your classroom. Today, we are going to be talking about what mental health is, how it is related to emotional distress, some statistics, signs, and a few discussion activities and tips on approaching students and reporting a concern here at Iowa Central. So what is mental health and emotional distress? Mental health disorders can cause symptoms of emotional distress that persist for long periods or occur in cycles. Mental suffering as an emotional response to an experience that arises from the effort or memory of a particular event, occurrence, pattern of events, or condition. Sometimes students experience trauma and it hasn't registered yet, or their brain hasn't processed it right away, and this could hit them immediately, a few weeks or months or years later. Trauma is just really complex. Emotional distress can usually be discerned from its symptoms: anxiety, depression, loss of ability to perform tasks, or physical illness. If you see a student being sick often, or, common thing is anxiety nowadays. So that's really common. You probably see in your classroom, or maybe even you experience that as well. So emotional distress is a broad term. It can refer to a wide range of symptoms from a variety of mental health disorders, but many people without any disorders experience this. So you can just feel anxious. Whether or not a mental health problem is present, emotional distress can be overwhelming and affect daily functioning. The symptoms may resolve on their own, but a variety of strategies can help, such as practicing stress reduction and building a support network. So a lot of times, safe people when they come to school when students come to school, or come to school or work, the people there are your safe people. Like, so you being teachers, you will be, some students safe people. So we have a video, and I gotta switch my screen. And this talks about some of the mental health stuff we're going to be talking about today. I'll share my sound. Okay.
Mental illness can affect anyone. Mental health affects how we feel, think, and act. It's important at every stage of life so that we can cope with stressful situations, work productively, and make meaningful contributions to our community. However, the statistics are staggering. Over 45% of teens suffer from a mental disorder, and 1 in 5 teens suffer from a severe mental illness. That's 20% of our teen population. Mental illnesses are brain function disorders. They have many causes and result from complex interactions between a person's genes and their environment. A person struggling with mental health should not be viewed any different than if someone were experiencing a physical illness. Mental illness is not a choice or a failure. It does not discriminate. It can affect anyone, regardless of age, gender, social status, ethnicity, or any other aspect of cultural identity. In fact, mental illnesses occur at similar rates around the world, in every culture and in all socioeconomic groups. The concern with mental health isn't just about the statistics. It's about well-being. It can affect families, friends, and our communities. But you can help make a difference by learning to recognize the signs of mental illness. A mental illness makes the things you do in life hard, like work, school, and socializing. It's also not always clear when a problem with mood or thinking has become serious enough to be a concern. Sometimes a depressed mood is normal, such as when a person experiences the loss of a loved one. But if that depressed mood continues to cause distress or gets in the way of normal daily functioning, the person may benefit from professional care. If you think you or someone you know might be struggling with their mental health, it is best to consult a professional. Early identification and effective treatment is key to treating a disorder and preventing future disability. A healthcare professional will connect symptoms and experiences to help formulate a diagnosis. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people between 10 to 24. If you're thinking about suicide, are worried about a friend or loved one, or would like emotional support, call 1-800-273-8255.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to just go over a few statistics. I know some were mentioned in the video, but mental health conditions impact a large number of youth, like we just saw. So the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, has this slide to tell us about more statistics. That's also just a really good resource with lots of information, NAMI. So if you want more info, that's a really great resource to look up. So 1 in 5 children ages 13 to 18 have or will have a serious mental illness. 50% of all lifetime cases of mental illness begin by the age of 14 and 75% by the age of 24. The average delay between the onset of symptoms and intervention is 8 to 10 years. So hopefully by having this Zoom and other things, we're trying to prevent that from taking so long to get some intervention. 8 to 10 years is way too long. Approximately 50% of students age 14 and older with a mental illness drop out of high school. So those are some stats. And then we've got to pull, how many of you have dealt with mental health or emotionally distressed students in your classroom with a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Yeah. So
Most of you.
most of you, yeah.
Probably why you're here.
Yes. Thanks for coming.
And how many of you have reported a mental health concern? So we're hoping that this session helps to know how to report here at Iowa Central and other resources in the community as well. So hopefully we can help with that. So some just common mental health disorders. There's eating disorders, which include bulimia, anorexia, and binge eating. So we do help with that a little bit at Iowa Central, but that's usually a long-term issue, and we get outside resources to help actually with any of these things that are ongoing and long-term. So behavioral disorders, ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, autism spectrum disorder, and conduct disorder all fit under behavioral disorders. And then there's anxiety disorders. So there's a variety there. There's generalized anxiety disorder. You just become anxious for no reason. It just comes out of the blue. Panic disorders, social anxiety, OCD, and PTSD. And then there's mood disorders like depression or bipolar, and then substance use disorders, which could be legal or illegal drugs, alcohol, or prescription medications. So any of those things we want to help with at Iowa Central. And if it's beyond what we can do here, we'll refer out and find resources in the community, hopefully in a much timelier fashion than if a student would try to do it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so we have an activity, Nearpod. I don't know if you have ever used this before, so I'm gonna share my screen. I'll put it in the chat. Nearpod. So live participation, we want to start a new session. So you're going to go to the link that I'm going to put in the chat here. Well, I didn't link it last time. So you have to copy that and put it in your browser, please. And then you will use this code when it asks for your code that I'm adding after that in the chat. It's 4ZU7E, all capitalized. And so when you get into the Nearpod, it should look like this. Please speak up if you're having any issues. I can try to help. We all good? Looks like it. Okay, so the first activity is what is the first sign in your classroom that a student is struggling with mental health? Down here where it says share your thoughts, please type the first sign in your classroom that a student is struggling with mental health that you see most commonly. Withdrawn, change in discussion, depression, struggle in the classroom, change of performance, superficial expressions. Not participating. Change in attitude. So I appreciate you adding on the board, but I'm also wondering if you guys would like to elaborate and share on what you have posted.
I'd be happy to share, Danielle.
Awesome, thank you.
I had a student a couple years ago who was very engaged in the discussions and very positive in the discussions. And all of a sudden, I think it was on a weekend, the discussion that the student had responded to was very negative and almost aggressive. And so I reached out to the student and asked if the student was okay. And she just kind of spilled it all. So then I went to Carrie Otto, let her know, filled out the form, and then she notified whoever she needed to notify. But it was just such a change because I'd had this student before. The whole presentation of the discussion, and I know online it's a little harder to notice these changes, but it was just in the approach that student was using was not normal for that student. It almost was very dark. It didn't feel threatening really, but it was very concerning and alarming because I knew that student from before, and it wasn't that student.
Yeah, you noticed the change, and yeah, you reached out. They just needed someone to ask them, like, hey, are you okay? So yeah, that's awesome that you did that so that they were able to get the help that they need eventually. Did you have the student afterwards? Did you have the student again in class?
I did.
Did you see them go back to like being?
Went back to being the wonderful student that they were. I mean, the whole discussion when I read it the first time actually somewhat scared me not that the student was going to harm me or harm themselves or harm somebody else. It was just the demeanor of it. It really struck me as this is not normal. This is not right.
Mhm. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Does anybody else have any experience that they want to share from previous class? No? Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, these are definitely signs that a student is struggling that you have posted here. And that is our next slide that I was going to talk about as well. Some more signs of emotional distress, changes in appearance, poor hygiene, weight gain or weight loss, withdrawn, which you had posted on there. That's pulling away from people or things. That's huge. Worrying, feeling of guilt and or anxiety, which we had talked about before, depression, overwhelming fear or panic attacks. I've witnessed a few panic attacks this year at some of the high schools, and they're kind of scary. I dealt with those when I was a counselor, and it scared me while I was dealing with them. And so that is definitely a scary situation to be in. That is definitely a sign that a student is struggling in their personal life. Being aggressive or defensive, having a hard time concentrating, more conflict with peers, using alcohol or drugs, chronic headaches or body aches, having low or no energy, missing class attendance. I don't know that I saw that on this one, but on our last Zoom, that was huge. Like a lot of people had posted attendance being a sign, and I definitely agree with that. So we have one more activity in the Nearpod. Yeah. So in the same screen that we were just on, I hope you didn't exit out of that. The same screen. So go back to the same Nearpod. I'm going to switch the screen. We're good. Okay, we see the new screen. Okay, so how did you approach a student with a concern? What did you do? What do you need to consider before you approach them? And I know Dr. Angela Johnson, she shared with us kind of how she went through with hers. So if others could please share on this board how they approached the student and what they considered before approaching them. So as I'm reading these, I think it's awesome that you had reached out to a student when you noticed there was a change in their behavior. I'm a huge believer that every student needs a person. And that's sometimes why students keep attending, or that's why they keep coming back to your class, because you might be the person that actually asked them if they were okay, and not anybody else in their life has done that.
Doing it in an inconspicuous way. Also, I see that on most of these things, but not bringing a lot of attention to it and doing it privately. Letting the student come to you is awesome. Just that their instructor recognized something's not right and asked is so huge, and can start the conversation.
With all of these posts, is there something that sticks out to you that you maybe do different next time in a situation, or is there a situation that you want to bring up to the group that we can discuss?
I have a comment question.
Yeah.
So when students are withdrawn or quiet, it's a lot easier for me to try to reach out and be empathetic and say, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? This semester, I had a student who was, I guess the best word would almost be combative, just seemed angry about lots of things all the time, would want to argue about topics we were covering, would make comments about his classmates on certain work he would turn in. He would kind of ramble angrily. Like, I just really didn't know where all this anger was coming from, but I didn't know how to tactfully address or approach that without a little bit of fear on my end as well. So I guess that would be something I would like to hear from other people, if they have dealt with someone who is like an overly aggressive, angry student, and how they handled that.
Yeah, has anybody dealt with a situation like that before? Did you reach out to your dean, or like how did you end up handling it?
So the things that he would say and do in class most typically would be more like argumentative or questioning with me with something I was lecturing. So then I would just like calmly respond and answer to address what he was asking or saying without bringing attention to how he was talking to me, because I assumed that that would just potentially make it worse. So I would just always calmly answer him, or when he'd write something very aggressive or angry on feedback from an assignment, I would just very calmly explain, this is why you missed these points. So my response was always just to never come back at him with anger, but just always be calm. But I didn't know if I should have done anything beyond that. But I didn't feel comfortable doing anything beyond that because I was worried.
Yeah. Do you think, Amber, that this would be a concern, like a report it form?
Yeah. So we are always willing to reach out to a student in that situation. Like, something's not quite right. I could just call the student and say, how are you doing? I'm just checking in, and at least try to meet with the student and see if there's anything going on beyond the classroom causing all that anger. And they might not want to come in, but at least we can reach out and try. Obviously, if it gets to be a situation where you need security involved, you would call security and they would help if you felt threatened or in danger. But definitely we can reach out, and we'll go through the forms that are on Triton Pass here later in the session. But you could send in a concern form and we'd be happy to reach out to the student.
Yeah. That would definitely be a situation where I would have probably reached out to my, my supervisor and been like, help me. But it sounded like you felt like you handled it on your own. But when I get in situations like that, I always like to inform my supervisor, just to let them know what's going on, because it can, it can turn into something bigger or not.
Yeah. So in the past, when I've had aggressive students, when I thought they were actually like aggressive to the point of danger, I did, like when John was my dean, I was like, I have this student, he's coming to my office. Like, I want you to be around. Like, I can
Right.
tell that this could be a bad thing. And with this student, I was never like physically afraid. It was just more like afraid of like a verbal type explosion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Does anybody have any comments on that specific situation or a different situation that they'd like to talk about before we move on? Do you have anything you want to comment?
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
So I had a student in my office and they were just, you felt like they were really had a lot of anxiety, and we were talking about home life and school life and such. I brought up, I said, do you want to talk to somebody else, talk to a counseling professional? And they said, no, I'm okay. How far do you push that question?
You want to answer?
Yeah, it's really got to be up to that person. But you could at least walk them over, or do you know where that resource is located on campus? It's in this building, in this room. Do you know how to get there? Do you want me to just at least walk you over there? I could introduce you. That might be an open door. And then if they decide they want to use that resource, they can. That brings up a point. We are looking at some apps. Sometimes students are more willing to talk to someone not in person. They're used to Zoom, and so there are apps that can be used. And also there's lots of phone numbers like hotlines. 988 is a good one that we'll discuss later. And so students might be apt to use that rather than go see a person. So we'll give you those options too. At least that might be something they would do if they don't feel comfortable going to talk to someone else.
You know, the good thing is that they did feel comfortable like telling you that they had the problem. But like, yeah, you don't feel like equipped to help them, you know, see it through. So yeah, walking them over, and yeah, like Amber said, that would probably be a good idea. Okay, if does anybody else have anything that they want to comment on about what we've talked about? If not, I will move on to our presentation. Okay. Thanks for sharing, guys. I like open dialogue a lot. So tips on responding to student mental health and emotional distress, like you sometimes view them as excuses. That can get challenging, but I think building relationships with students is crucial. That is how you get them to, you know, open up in your class too. You're not asking to help them deal with their anxiety, but that's what comes along with it. You're their person that they trust. And so this is why we're having this Zoom, so you know what to do after they share that information with you. So I did this presentation in August, and so I had high school early bird instructors in here too. If they ask to go to the counselor or principals, it's best to let them go. So if you're a professor and they are asking during class to go see Amber or the health center, it's probably best to, let them go. And if it's like a concern, if you see that they are disheveled, maybe calling Amber and being like, hey, this student is on their way, they just left my class, so that they know that they're coming. And if they're consistently asking, you can reach out to her, as a concern, to let them know, like, this is what you're seeing in your class. But that's also a part of the form as well, is what we're talking about on the next slide. If a student is using mental health and emotional distress as an excuse for not completing work or coming to class, being empathetic and kind, but also setting those boundaries. Sometimes it's a fine line, but it sounds like a lot of you are good about reaching out and asking, hey, what's the story? Are you okay? Like, do you need help? And it is okay to be flexible with expectation because of certain situations. We're all human beings and things happen. Do you want to elaborate on that at all, or do you have anything else to say? No. So yeah. So we are good now. I can't find my mouse. I have 3 screens, so sometimes I lose my mouse. There it is. Okay. All right. So Amber's going to talk about this.
So we're all mandatory reporters. But that is through the age of 18. So if you have any students that maybe are in high school still or doing some learning, they're 17 or under, then we are mandatory reporters. So if there's any kind of abuse, like we know from going through the training, then that needs to be reported to DHS or any suspect of that abuse. But when they turn 18, of course, if anyone is planning to hurt themselves or hurt someone else, that is a very dangerous situation that we want reported immediately. So if it's an imminent danger, of course, call campus security and 911. But if you just have the suspicion about someone, we've got a couple of forms that we have you turn in and they are responded to immediately. And so we'll go over those here in the next slides, but it gets a little tricky when people are adults, when they've turned 18 or they by law are considered adults when they're 18, but there's just lots of still emotional things going on. So if you called DHS and the person was over 18, they would take the information, but unless law enforcement needs to be called because it's a dangerous situation, we can just encourage them to get help with the resources that are available, but you can't make someone do it. So reporting at Iowa Central, there's a couple of different ways to do that. So there's a report it form, they're on Triton Pass. If you go to the padlock, it's about 3/4 the way down. And it's called Report It. That one is like we were talking about, if someone is a threat to themselves or other people, you are concerned that they're going to hurt themselves or hurt someone on the campus. It's a danger, it's a threat, or they're heading that way. You would use the Report It form, and that goes right to, sorry, it's taking so long. There we go. Right down there. So that form goes to campus security. Now, if it's an emergency, obviously you would call 911 and campus security, not use the form. But this form does go to security and it's read right away and attended to. And then there is a group on campus that meets called the Behavioral Intervention Team once a week. And then these are continuously followed up on, and we monitor students and make sure that they're doing okay and they've got the resources they need and they are not a threat to our campus or themselves. Now, if you have a concern about a student, you just think they're just not doing well, they haven't attended regularly, they seem down, they've got a lot going on in their life. I know they've lost a loved one, they've lost a job, like things have been going on. Or they have a concern about school, just grades, or then this concern form under self-service for students is available. So students can fill this out about any other students, or you can fill it out for a student yourself. And then that will go to the appropriate dean and be distributed. So it's for concerns, but not necessarily a threat to a person's health or safety. And then that's followed up on. And the other thing is just to call or email over to the health center. Both Carmen and I can take information and then follow up with students. So I am a registered nurse with a psychiatric background. I am not a licensed mental health counselor. And so I can do some initial assessment like I would do in the ER just to see where a student's at and do a few, 1 or 2 sessions about coping skills and things like that. And then we have relationships with counselors in Fort Dodge and the surrounding area to help students get connected. And usually we can get connected within a week to a licensed counselor if students are wanting that. And so we can help navigate that. If they call on their own, it's going to be months. So we really encourage them to just meet with us first and just get a handle on the situation, and then we can help them to navigate the resources in the community. So we are continuously working with the counselors in the area to try to get our students in quickly. It's a little bit of a time crunch when you're at college. So if they say, well, it's going to be 2 months, that might destroy their whole semester if it takes 2 months to get into a counselor. And so we've worked really hard to try to help with resources that are close to our campus. If they don't have a ride, we help them get there, make sure their insurance is going to work. If they don't want their parents to know for some reason, we kind of try to help with that situation. So there's just a lot that goes into it. And it takes a lot of courage for them to, in the first place, come. So we might even go with them so they know where they're going and just get them there. And then they can take it from there. So that's what we can do here on campus. Do you guys have questions about those forms?
I
Or
do
how to-
about the concern form.
Yeah.
So and I have it pulled up on another screen to look at it. So my original understanding that this would have just been for students to use and not faculty and other people. So I'm glad you're telling us about it. But when it says, what's the relationship between you and the parties involved? So if I'm faculty and I'm concerned about a student is not listed as an option. And I'm also wondering, like, if I'm a student, maybe I have a concern about a classmate who's been kind of harassing me or that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering if there's like any way that could be added or modified so that it's easier for people to figure out what they would need to be marking.
Yeah, I can ask about adding those.
Okay, so when you under the, what is the relationship between you and the parties involved in this concern?
Yeah,
So
it just
having-
says self, faculty, staff, advisor, coach. So it doesn't say like, I can't say it's my student, or a student can't say like it's a peer.
Okay, that's
My
good
friend or
feedback.
classmate.
Yeah.
So
So,
it could be
Amber,
listed under. Oh.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in for a second. So Nicole, just to be clear, if it's a behavioral concern, that should really go to the report it form. The concern form is more academic, or that's what it was designed to be. Not to say that it can't be used for whatever. Any form getting filled out is going to be better than no form, right? But the report it form is really about the behavioral, the mental. The concern is more of, I'm having trouble with an instructor, I'm having trouble with a class, I can't get in with my advisor, those types of things.
And so if I was having a student that I have academic concerns about, like they were doing well, and now all of a sudden, like they're just bombing everything, where does that go?
That's an alert in the grade book.
That's an alert. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
It is kind of confusing.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be.
it would
So
be
the
really
bottom
nice
line is,
to have
no matter
something
what
that
you
says
fill
use
out,
this
go ahead.
for this.
Say that again.
It would be really nice if we had something that says like report it, used for XYZ, and concern used for ABC. And so like we know
Right.
exactly where to go, because there can be like confusion of if there's overlap.
So the concern form initially was meant for just the students. Okay, that was an HLC accreditation is what got that form going. Now, to say that it could be changed, absolutely. Maybe we need a form, right? Why do we have 3? Why do we have an alert? Why do we have a report it? Why do we have a concern? Maybe we as a team need to look at that so that we don't have the confusion. But that's what the concern form was initially designed for. I can say that with 100% accuracy because I designed it.
Well, I'm glad you're here to explain that to us.
It was to give the students a voice, a safe voice, right?
Okay.
I'm having
I
trouble
would-
with my instructor, da la la.
I would still say then as well, like even if you keep it and it remains like the student voice, I would add something about like peer, like another student, because it could be that I'm concerned about how another student is treating me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I made note of that on my notes, so thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah.
And I guess not being a faculty, I didn't know about the alert part on the grade book. So that's very good feedback for me too. I wrote that down. Any more questions on this slide? Comments? No? All right. And yeah, if you can always reach out to us if you have trouble finding the report, or you need, you have questions when you're filling it out. Don't hesitate to reach out to us about that.
So always refer or report when in doubt. So you can use that report it form if it was originally designed, just like concern was designed for students, that form was originally designed for situations where someone's safety was in jeopardy. But not to say that it can't be used for anyone. You're just like, that person's just not quite right. Something's going on and we're concerned, we're worried. And just like I said, that'll go to security. So if they're high school students, they've got counselors and social workers in the high schools that can help as well. But then there's a list here of different resources, both nationally and in our community. So in the last session, some people took a screenshot. It's just kind of a nice slide with lots of resources. The one I'd like to point out is 988. It's rather new. It's been around for maybe 6 months or so. And it's instead of 911 for medical emergencies, you can call 988, and that is a national hotline for mental health emergencies. Or anybody who's just like, I don't feel right. I don't know what to do. I'm stressed out. So it's 24 hours a day. It's confidential. And you get an operator who is a mental health professional who will assess the situation, talk to the person however long they need, can get law enforcement involved if necessary, will refer to local community resources. So it's just a really great resource that is pretty new in our United States. So it's national 988. So spread the word that is available 24 hours a day.
Mhm.
So we had scenarios, but we don't have time, which is fine because I love the open dialogue, like I said. But things to remember when dealing with these situations, keep in mind students' home life, are they in survival mode? Because a lot of times if they're having issues at home, they will be in survival mode. Even if, they are a college student and not a high school student, they might still live there. Every student needs a person, and maybe you are that person for that student because you showed that you cared. And remember your why. Sometimes when you're dealing with these situations, you get super overwhelmed. Remember why you got into teaching, students, and why you work here and things like that. But you also need to take care of yourself because, like I said, dealing with these situations can be hard. So what do you do for self-care? Your mental health matters too. So like I said, you could always reach out to us with questions, especially on those forums. Or if you're dealing with a situation and you need some feedback, here is our emails. And yeah, does anybody have any questions? I know we're out of time, but if you have any questions, we can stay. Remember to put your name and your birthday in the chat.
I had a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I know at some point, maybe a couple of semesters ago, there was discussion about, I think it's called like mental health first aid or something like that for us as instructors and as staff. Is there any progress on that? Because I feel like I need it. Like, I'm not in crisis right now, but just even listening to this and having this really great discussion, like I'm just like thinking, oh my goodness, like there are so many situations that come up. I can deal with them in the moment, but then it's like all in me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, is there progress on that, or is there anything that you can all, I don't know, remind me of that exists?
I can answer that for you.
Thank you.
We're actually starting that training this semester. We have 3 dates set. I just got the dates out to the deans, so we're going to get people signed up. We are going to be training all full-time employees. Okay, so it's going to take some time. We can only do 30 at a time, but we do have dates set for this semester. And so it will take us a little bit, but yes, Jessica, we are. Reach out to your dean, let them know that you're very interested. It's a day, so you would have to find an alternate for your classes that day. But if you want to be in it, then let's definitely get you in the first round. I've got a date in January, February, and I don't remember when the other one is, Jessica. March or April.
That's
Yep.
exciting. Thank you. I'll reach out to Jennifer. Thank you.
Yep.
That was a great question. That's good to know. Amber said she took it 2 or 3 times, and I've taken it 2 or 3 times just because we've been in the field. for so long. And it is, I even have the books actually in my desk that you receive when you do the training, that I did refer back to when I was creating this, just to, because, you know, it's great information to have. So, any other questions? No, well, I appreciate everybody coming. And I don't know how many sessions you have left for the day, but I hope everybody's day goes well. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have anything or need anything. So
Thank you.
thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.